Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page for episode 127, The Masonic Party. You know me. I'm John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia, an academic lodge. And I'll hand it off to Jason Richards for his introduction.
Everybody knows that the Patriot Lodge is an academic lodge, dude.
The Patriot Lodge.
The Patriot Lodge is like the Ohio State University, which doesn't have an academic lodge to my knowledge. Yeah. Anyway, you also know me, unless you're brand new to the show, in which case you don't know me or John. My name's Jason Richards, Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia.
Thank you, Jason. Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from the Winding Stairs, and I'm a member of Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in sunny Kissimmee, Florida.
Thank you, Juan. Nick Johnson.
Hello, my name is Nick_.Johnson.blogspot.com. Past Master Corinthian Lodge number 67.com.
/awesome.
/awesome. That's what the kids are doing now, right? I mean, that's what they're into.
And add a Pokestop in front of your name and you're good to go.
Yes.
Finally, last but not least, the full house, Robert Johnson.
Sorry, I was handling business. Anyway, Robert Johnson, Waukegan Lodge 78 past master, current secretary, and host of Whence Came You Masonic Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Great. Glad we could all make it this time. Let's get right into Masonic news this week. We have pretty light news, fortunately, but we have some really cool exciting things coming out of the Grand Lodge of D.C. That's right. According to HODAP's blog, we have the American University Lodge, which has been granted dispensation to work under dispensation by Grand Master Kenneth D. Fuller of the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. So this is super exciting because we have another academic lodge in existence, and you can see that Chris Hodap at least threw us a bone when mentioning Patriot Lodge number 1957.
He didn't put the article in there. It doesn't count.
George Mason University in Virginia. But hey, this is super cool. Academic lodges have a place in my heart. If you want to go back and hear more about the Patriot Lodge or the Boston University Lodge, go back to our Academic Lodges episode. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but here are the esteemed brethren that have got this lodge off the ground. So congrats and good luck. Anything you guys want to add to that?
Shout out to Peter, who I've known for a long time, because I see that he's taking over as the most fun part of any lodge, secretary. So good on you, Peter.
No, it's great. I love the university scheme under the UGLE and the Academic Lodge Consortium, in the United States. I think it's a great way to get out and active among the younger generation today.
So I'm going to let a little bit of news slip out. It's not quite ready for prime time yet, but you heard it here first that
You're pregnant? Congratulations!
Hey, congrats. I already got enough kids. The Patriot Lodge is teaming up with the Columbia Lodge, and we are this fall going to be having a Mid-Atlantic academic convocation in which we'll be inviting all of these academic lodges in the Mid-Atlantic area to come down and talk about some of the lessons learned of starting up academic lodges and, of course, have some academic research. So stay tuned to this podcast, and we'll have a website with more information up in the very near future, hopefully by the next episode of TMR. So,
will you be having them watch our particular episode about academic lodges? Just saying.
Walk away, yes. But I'm super excited. This is great, and again, those brothers that I do know that are members of academic lodges, and just the whole work of starting a new lodge. That's tough enough. It really is a great experience. So congrats. Did I say Columbia Lodge? I meant Colonial Lodge. Thank you, Jason.
I was like, don't be misrepresenting my alma mater there.
Not at all. Slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Too bad they didn't go with Merca Lodge. I think that would have really Merca.
Instead of American Lodge. The Merca Lodge. Also see our Merca episode.
It's Chuck Norris cradling a square in compasses.
Oh, could you could have Ron Swanson whittling something? I mean, seriously. Endless.
Yes.
Okay, then. Let's go to some trivia. Nick, I think you've been back on the saddle again, so why don't you introduce us to the Masonic Monday question?
On Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
Take it away, Nick.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Oh, man, that scares me every single time. I imagine God sounds like that a little bit. All right, so last week's question was kind of this crazy one that kind of just popped in my head because I saw something. So the answer to it was David Bernard, who published Light on Masonry in 1829. That was Reverend David Bernard, who was a former Freemason. So congratulations to Chris Serrato, Richard Holland, Jonathan Primo, Joey Boyer, James Webb, Ed Potter, Heber Longhurst, James Dean. You all get my applause and congratulations. Thank you, guys. All right, so on to this really, really tough yet really simple question. I know you guys love those. So, the Masonic Monday question for the week of August 1st, 2016. Most Masonic systems seem to employ sets of various working tools, operative tools repurposed to explain a moral truth or impart a spiritual lesson. What differs throughout the world is which tools are found in which places. One of our earliest references to working tools was in an installation ceremony from the late 1800s in England, where 8 specific working tools were named in a particular order. Name the 8 working tools in order. Hint, you should always start with a rule. When you have the answer, send it to MasonicMonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, lodge number, and the hashtag Who's Seeing Suicide Squad? Me.
Dude, reviews are terrible.
I know, but you know what? I have to see it because I bought in. I bought in on the trailer.
Hashtag Marvel wins.
Again. Love those guys. It's because of Ben Affleck, really. But enough with the comic book talk. I've already gotten yelled at on Reddit for that. So back to you, John.
Enough comics. Whew. Finally, someone's on my side. Let's get into tonight's topic. This is going to be a fun one. And due to the nature of the U.S. political system, where we are coming up to yet another presidential election, this has been a very polarizing election season. We have, I think, brothers that are now, I mean, I've seen in my personal experience, brothers coming out on Facebook, you know, just throwing words back and forth with other brothers about their political stance. And, you know, it really, if you don't have good temper and good, you know, just being able to have good rhetoric, which we're taught to have, and use logic, which we're also taught to use, these things could get really out of hand. And so I thought, well, what if, understanding that this is a very politically charged and polarizing election season, and that there was at one point the first third party being the Anti-Masonic Party, well, what if we try to bring people together, find things we can agree on, and create a Masonic Party? What would that look like? I'm not saying this is.
It wouldn't, because Masons and politics don't go together.
You're at all.
And show's done.
Yep.
And on the social media.
But that's a serious point. should we talk about politics at all?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because in today's society, you can't get away from them. I understand not talking about politics within the confines of the lodge room, because the lodge room is supposed to be a place of harmony. However, we are well outside of the lodge room, and politics are terrible, but they are very, very important. So we need to talk about it. And there are a lot of tenets in the Masonic fraternity that we can directly tie to political platforms, just out of the nature of the goodwill of the fraternity.
There you go. So we're taught to not mix religion and politics within the confines of the lodge, because religion and politics divide men. So let's break that rule outside of the lodge and go at it. So what we'll try to do tonight is pick a variety of political issues that are out there, and we'll debate amongst ourselves. Where do we think the Masonic Party would stand? And the only rule that we have here is that it has to align with something that we're taught in our Masonic moral teachings or in the ritual. So you can't just make it up that I think Masons should be for this because I think so. And if you have something to tie it to, that gives you bonus points. So in no particular order, let's start with some domestic issues. Where do you believe the Masonic Party as a whole should stand on gun control? Did someone say guns? Robert.
So let's make sure when we're going through this that we tie it back to ritual and Masonic teachings.
Yes.
And for everybody listening, I think that needs to be an important caveat here, because when we're talking about abortion, gun control, and a whole host of political issues, do not project what we are saying onto you and assume that we are disagreeing with your moral sensibilities because we go a different direction than you would.
Sure, and you know what? I'm going to say things that are against what I probably believe. So it's just what is a uniting platform aside from Juan's guns? Juan, what do you think? What do you think the Masonic platform should stand on gun control?
I was gonna say, are you sure you don't want to start with abortion? We could start soft. We can go with a softball, and then we can go.
This is a perfect primer. Just diving into the deep end.
Yeah.
So I think a Masonic party would be in favor of the Second Amendment because they love ancient landmarks, and the United States' landmark is the Constitution.
The Second Amendment is technically a part of the Bill of Rights, not the original Constitution.
Correct. So they would consider it, though.
We all know the ancient landmarks have changed.
And they're fake. So, yeah, I think they would probably uphold the Second Amendment. I'm not sure where they would stand, however, with like everyday carry, right? Because maybe they would. I'm just thinking about the Tyler's sword and guarding the home or guarding the lodge. Are they saying it's okay there? How would they stand? I would defer to Juan as another fellow Second Amendment.
Well, I do want to ask a couple of questions just to put everybody on the same mindset. If I recently came across a very cool video where they were displaying George Washington's sword. Back in the time in the colonial America, it would not be out of place to see a man carrying a sword. And
Tactical sword?
Some of these, well, his in particular was more decorative or more as a symbol than anything. But what would happen if you were to have a sword today and be walking outside? Most states, it would be illegal for you to do so.
You'd be mistaken for a cosplayer.
Yeah. Ren Fair.
Yeah, you could probably get away with it. But if I personally think the Second Amendment has more to do with the protection from tyranny than it necessarily does with the protection of the home.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's how I feel. So considering that the three enemies of Masonry being ignorance, superstition, and tyranny, uh, having access to firearms, I think would be something that would rank really high up in the scale of importance.
Now, speaking about defense of your home, I think there's something to be said for that as well. Because, RJ, I don't buy the argument of Masonry wanting to uphold ancient landmarks and wanting to uphold the entirety of the Bill of Rights as an ancient landmark, because what about the 18th Amendment prohibition? What if no one ever actually appealed that? Will we still want to uphold that or change that?
We're still living that right now in lodges.
Okay,
Oh,
point
was it?
taken. That said,
I see where you are.
that said, we have a duty, at least in Virginia, to defend ourselves, and we have the right to defend ourselves and our family and our property. And given that right is explicitly stated, I think that a Masonic party would be more in favor of, or less in favor of, undue restrictions toward firearm access than others. So along the same lines of what you all are saying.
Can
I
I
like
say something
what you
very
said.
quick? There has to be a brother that's listening to this right now or watching the video, and you might be in complete disagreement with almost everything you heard.
Good.
Do something about it. Go either to the Masonic Roundtable or our Facebook page and tell us why we're wrong. We want to hear it.
Yeah.
Now, however, please do it in a civil manner. Like, we've seen how some of these conversations go. We want to hear your position, because I feel very comfortable in my position. I feel very confident about it. Perhaps there is something that you can posit that might make me consider it otherwise and change my point of view. So we would like to hear that. I would love for you to go and add it. I think the best place to put it would be in the events page on the Facebook page. So
Have the conversation there, light up the page, and I will read as many as I can, to include ones with which I do not agree, at the end of this episode.
After we're off the air.
Yes.
Let's move on to the next topic. Let's do one that's a little bit easier. How about
abortion. Okay.
How about not? Let's go into civil rights. I think this one should be an easy one. And I'll lead off by saying we argue for the equality of human existence. And so we meet on the level, and we try to treat every fellow creature in a like manner. So I think that civil rights would be something that we would support in general by saying that everyone should have equal access to all the government provisions and equal protection under the law. What say you, RJ?
Totally agree. There is the kind of I was going to insert a few jokes into this episode, because there are some things that in the Masonic fraternity, how would they work in real, in a government situation. So everybody's equal and on the level except the ladies. They are clandestine. They can't be on the level. Just kidding. Equality across the board. Absolutely. Men, women, regardless of social status, civil, it doesn't matter. You already said it.
So, while I completely agree with everything that John and Robert just said, I do have to bring up the bifurcation between the tenets of the Masonic fraternity and how the Masonic fraternity plays out in practice in some areas of the world, to include the United States. Because we are one of the most segregated institutions on the face of the planet right now. We don't allow women, and in a lot of areas there is a giant segregation between ethnic minorities and Caucasian Freemasons. So that said, while I think a Masonic party would, undoubtedly champion and advocate civil liberties and the pursuit of civil rights, I think the question would be, in practice, whether or not it would be able to get the traction, given that the fraternity itself has so far to go on that end.
Interesting. Good. So we've covered 2 topics there. Let's move to a different category, which would be social issues. What do you think the Masonic platform would contain regarding education?
Now that is an interesting one, because the Scottish Rite, if you look back in the 1920s, its stated positions included, and I'm not even kidding, a federal department of education. That was actually in its stated platform. You can find it on a blog post that I wrote a long time ago, where I actually asked the question, would this be considered okay? And so, at least within our fraternal history, this idea of education and, how power to forward education does have some credence. So.
What's funny about that, Nick, is there was back in whatever it was, late 60s, it was the American Independent Party platform, and I'm just pulling it up here. There is something to include or to stay away from an enlightened and advancing educational program assisted but not controlled by the federal government. And their party platform was by George Wallace, who was kind of a black sheep Mason. Kind of interesting.
Very interesting.
Well, and I should run through the pronouncement just because, it's one of those that it's fascinating. I mean, the Supreme Council says in its belief has always favored free public education, use of English as the language of instruction, and the inculcation of patriotism in school. And then it also says that it favors a federal Department of Education with a secretary in the president's cabinet, a national university in Washington, D.C., which would be supported by the government, the compulsory use of English as the language of instruction, and that American schools would... Sorry, my sprinkler system decided that it needs to shoot the window. But that it also would be nonpartisan, non-sectarian within the public school system, that all would have equal educational opportunities. And this was from the October 1927 Scottish Rite Sun, so that would be the local paper for I think, one of the Minnesota Scottish Rite Valleys, but this was actually a reprint of something that was coming from the Supreme Council. So it's interesting that you mentioned education, because there was a slight push to do that. And I mean, not just do that, but very expansive, the idea of even having essentially a federal university. That's insane.
Juan, what say you? Okay, how about one thing that comes to mind when you're talking about education? One, we do strive for people to keep exploring and searching for more light, but we also teach the 7 liberal arts and sciences, which actually has been part of the curriculum for secondary school way back, even 100 years ago. And so that was part of the education system. That is also something that we then carry forward in our ritual even today. So I think that's kind of an amazing...
I think we would need a return to the 7 liberal arts and sciences.
Bring it back. Yeah.
Because, how many times you go outside with your kids and you're like, hey, what constellation is that? And they're like, what? I don't know. And then they pull out their phone and they do the Sky Live thing, and they're like, oh, that's Ursa Major.
What's a consolation?
What's a constellation?
A prize? It's the second prize, yeah.
Exactly.
It's when you're looking for a Charizard and you actually get a Pidgey.
I don't even know what you just said.
I don't know. It sounds dirty. I don't even want to ask.
And so many Pidgeys. That's what I make my money on now. Evolve, evolve, evolve.
Oh my God! They just did You guys did Pokemon? Is that what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Hashtag I don't play Pokemon.
It's worse than comics. Juan, save us from this.
Okay, yeah, I do agree that a return to the liberal arts and sciences will be something that will be part of the educational platform, only because I feel, not because I feel, but I've witnessed, and I'm sure many of you have witnessed, that the further we stray from, at the very least, the trivium, the less opportunities we have to know and express what we, and express ourselves correctly. And we've talked about it. For those of you who haven't listened to our liberal arts and sciences series, I invite you to do that, where we discussed, speaking good is not enough. It's important to be able to know how to construct a sentence and how to convey a message persuasively and how to not become a victim to somebody else's artistic rhetoric. And in our society, we seem to be missing that. You find, and all you got to do is go to either Reddit or one of the major Masonic Facebook groups and see how the discussions evolved. It's just fallacy after fallacy after fallacy.
I think you just made a mistake when you said, watch how the conversations evolve. Because I think that says that they're moving forward, but I think they're de-evolving.
Evolution.
Yeah, it's interesting. Part of the higher education, I would even argue that higher education, when you get into the colleges and things of that nature, a Masonic Party, like if I was writing an educational policy, I would, as a Mason, try to figure out some way to make it like a 50-50, like work and apprenticeship, no matter what the job is.
That was my next point, because our organization is based on that. It's based on that relationship between an apprentice and a master, and the transition from one to the other. And there is intrinsic value in that relationship. And if we were to have a say in the educational platform, there would be some sort of vocational, this is just my opinion, there would be some sort of vocational aspect to
Well, let's go through that, because I think now we're dipping into the concept of jobs and jobs programs, right? I think as a Masonic platform, we brought operatively as well as speculatively, and so there is the matter of doing good work and getting paid your wages. We're taught that, and even in the Scottish Rite, they elaborate a little bit on the value, the virtue of good work for work's own reward, right? Virtue is its own reward. And so I think that, that if there were a Masonic platform, that it would be almost New Deal-ish in the sense that there should be something inspired to encourage people to go out and work hard and get their fingers dirty.
Yeah, I mean, like, just fantasy land, every doctor was a PA who was a nurse, who has done x-rays, who has changed diapers. Just come all the way up, learn all the elements. It's kind of funny, you look on things like Glassdoor.com to like review different companies, and I challenge you to find a ton of bad reviews for employees who work at McDonald's. Every one of them says the same thing. I started by sweeping and mopping the floor, and then I had to work all the way through every station until I got to a point where I work hard, and I think, and like almost nobody is complaining about the wage. They're like, I get what I think I deserve what I make. It's kind of weird.
I'd totally be stuck in the sausage McMuffin spot the whole time.
That's eat the profit, Nick.
That's what I would do too. That's Masonic, right? We eat.
Yes. Free pancakes for all. That's our platform.
President's Day. Free pancakes.
Oh man, I love it. IHOP should have a holiday for that. I'm already off.
Mason's Day. There we go.
Let's just swap out Christopher Columbus Day.
Okay, yeah, he was a fraud anyway.
Yeah.
Hey now, that's the best federal holiday out there.
Amerigo Vespucci. Okay, let's go to international issues. How about foreign policy? What should our concept of trade and immigration and that look like?
Travel often.
Ah.
One of the best things about the Masonic experience is being able to travel and experience new ways of doing things in new cultures.
Worshipful Master, tear down this wall.
Could you imagine, like you say travel, right? But
Yeah.
only to recognized countries.
Ooh.
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, is that actually Masonic international relations are very Westphalian anyway in that respect, because, it's like you show up and it's like, well, they took over Russia for this Grand Lodge. Well, what do we do? Well, we're going to sit for a while and see how they do. If they do okay, we're going to say they're a country. If they don't, we'll just wait. I mean,
Well, that was
seriously,
like that was like the GLNF a couple of years ago, right?
Yep.
Before
exactly.
we re-recognized them.
Exactly. It was a wait and see. Well, they'll figure it out, and we'll just wait it out. I mean, because when the Soviet Union took over, the United States took, I think, 6-7 years. Jason, you'll have to correct me, but it wasn't an immediate recognition that the Soviets were in control of that particular country. It wasn't until many years later that they actually said, okay, yeah, they're in charge now.
Yeah, Freemasonry is very much like the United Nations. Again, everything subsists on recognition, and it often takes years to actually get that recognition when it's kind of business as usual in the actual country itself.
And it's even more complicated since there, Lady Masons here and co-Masons there.
So here's an interesting question, though. Interventionism versus non-interventionism, because we saw this a little bit with the Grand Lodge of, was it Brussels or Belgium? I think it was Brussels that de-recognized the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of Tennessee and Georgia over their stance on homosexuality.
I believe it was Belgium. Yep, you're right.
It was Belgium? Okay.
Yeah, the regular Grand Lodge of Belgium or something like that.
So I think
So would Masons be in favor of interventionism or not?
I would say yes for recognized countries.
Yeah.
That it is our responsibility as Masons to prevent harm from being done to another brother.
Dude, you're going full Monroe Doctrine on me.
Therefore, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that's what it would be. And so, because we have an obligation to prevent harm from being done to a brother, if we can, then sure, that if we see one of our allies being attacked upon, we should come to their aid.
Well, and that's kind of it's kind of funny how Freemasonry works, is that it works in the inverse, in that, we don't have standing armies. We can't enforce rights the way that a country can. If somebody walks into their territory, we can't enforce rights that way. And so in Freemasonry, it works in the reverse. So, if somebody invades your territory, starts setting up lodges, you essentially call everybody around you and say, tell this guy that he's a jerk and tell him he doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And that's essentially how it works. Is it's the gang up on the other guy mentality, which is completely different than how modern foreign policy works, which is the complete opposite, which is who's got the biggest guns or who's got the best diplomats.
Now,
And I completely misspoke earlier. It's not the Monroe Doctrine, it's the Truman Doctrine. All of my history professors back at JMU are shunning me now.
Except for they just said, you said a Grand Master.
A question on intervention. Would we then come to the aid just by seeing, or would we wait for a sign of distress, inviting the help?
I would think we would have the obligation to do it regardless. If we saw a recognized country in danger.
What if the recognized country was not necessarily not cognizant or apprised of that danger, but what if the recognized country did not view it as such?
I love how we're talking around certain things. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Once you guys become Master Masons, come back and listen to this show.
Yeah.
Watch your back. That's all I got to say. Let's go to the next topic, which would be Social Security and family. what should be our responsibility as the Masonic Party to take care of others?
There would have to be huge reformations, because there's so many programs out there that there's no order. They would have to bring order out of the chaos. Ugh. No, so think about something as simple as I don't want people to call me a socialist. Don't call me a socialist. But if everybody was working, right?
Okay,
and
Bernie.
if 4%, I can't do it. Nick does it the best.
The 1% of 2%.
1% of the so if everybody's working, right? Let's say you lose your job or something. Let's say that it just goes down to some simple absolutes, like you always pay, like, well, we'll get into taxes later, but like based on your taxes and the things that you've paid in, let's not. I mean, it'll just be a set amount for everybody, maybe, and then you get 1 year of your bills paid, and then you also get job training and go back to work. I mean, that's kind of. I mean, that's a little Oddfellows-ish platform, maybe.
No, but I agree with you. I think aid for someone who is able should be temporary. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
It should be something that stays. And I just recently had a conversation about this. That's something that's happening in Puerto Rico. We have a public housing, and public housing is very prominent. And a huge problem that we have is there's a lot of drugs in it, and there's even like gun battles between the police and some of these residential areas. Anyway, part of the big problem is that there are no things set where it makes this housing temporary for the people that are able. And you have a lot of youth in there that are capable of working. They're able-bodied men of age that could go out and work. But there doesn't seem to be almost like I want to say rehabilitation, just because I can't think of the right word, where you take a man who's in distress, he's lost everything, and he has no home to go to. Perhaps you could put them on a housing on a temporary basis, but there is a deadline. By this date, you have to be out. And here are some educational tools things that you can do to further your education, to help you with your presentation and your job interview skills, and then finally you find a good job and you're able to support your own self.
So you brought up that great point about the rehabilitation. Just the other day, I was watching a video about criminal rehabilitation somewhere in the Netherlands area, whether it was Sweden or somewhere like that. And they have a great program where their criminals are like released, who go on to become great members of society, or at least get a really good head start because of the rehabilitation process. And of course, the video gained a lot of traction because it's, look at these criminals learning the 7 liberal arts and sciences while the American criminals are locked up in concrete cages. You know, they kind of played it like this. But your point being, you know, you're able, you're young, give them the tools they need to succeed and let them go succeed, and give them a fair shake in some sense. I mean, of course, there's stipulations and everything to things that, I mean, we can't even possibly imagine at this point. But
And naturally, we have to open this up to women and children and widows and orphans as well. So, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, what we would do if there were, you know, men or Masons in distress. But how would you take care, or how would we as a Masonic Party take care of the family as well?
You know, I think one thing that we'll transition to the next topic, which is we've talked a lot about social programs and helping out and doing those things that we're taught to do as individuals. But that leads to the next question, which is a general question. Overall, would the Masonic Party be for big or small government, or the federation of governments? And I'll chime in to say I think if you look at how our Grand Lodge structures and the concept of recognition, as well as the powers gained to the worshipful master of his own respective lodge, albeit beholden underneath of a greater Grand Lodge, that you do have a system of federation in the sense where authority is delegated down, and that people can have their own rules and bylaws. And so I think that you would still have a concept of, while there may be, in this Masonic platform that we're imagining, lots of federal programs to help out, I think you would still have a lot of local decisions being made at a state or jurisdictional level. What say you, Robert?
Very much agree. I mean, but I don't think I would agree with it in the sense of the way Masonry is run in the United States. I think this works as if George Washington had become the Grand Master of the United States, then I think that works. Ultimately, you have each state with, leading up into the Grand Lodge making those decisions, and then you have a conference of Grand Masters who could potentially democratically, this confluence of states would come together, and you'd have a democratic platform there where they're voting for everything and passing it with perhaps a Grand Master of the United States with a final decision.
We call that the Senate.
Well, I mean, yeah, but to an extent, like, it would just be president, governors,
Right.
mayors.
Everything else, yeah.
Just that. Not all the BS in between.
Interesting. Would that be in our benefit as a nation, or do you think it's not working so well, the system we have today?
Well, I think our government's way too big today.
Well, I meant the Masonic system in the sense
Oh,
of just having 3 tiers, basically.
Yeah. But
For those not familiar, in generally, you have the Worshipful Master, who's the president of the lodge. You have a district deputy Grand Master, who's equivalent to like a county commissioner, and then you have a Grand Master, who's like the governor of the state. Juan?
yeah.
I was going to say, removing that layer would disconnect the constituency from the head, wouldn't it? Because right now you have the Senate and the Congress, I mean the House and the Senate, they are elected representatives of the bottom. So removing that layer, wouldn't that leave too much power on the top and severing the tie with the people?
Do our Grandmasters have too much power at the top today?
Oh, I didn't ask that.
Well, and think about it this way: Freemasonry actually has all 3 of the different government styles within the country. You've got Grand Lodges that all function independently within their own states, but then you have something like General Grand, which is in the York Rite, which for the most part functions at a state level like a confederation, but at its highest level, the General Grand is in charge of foreign relations and making sure everybody's kind of on the same page. And then you have the Scottish Rite, which is very centralized. I mean, sure, valleys are allowed to do their own thing a little bit, but ultimately the top level is making a lot of decisions that get pushed down to those valleys and to those Scottish Rite brothers. So, even within our own Masonic system, we can't decide on what is best working. Now, I would say that the York Rite system is slowly starting to collapse, and so we're starting to see the state only, and then the strong central being the most powerful, at least within the Masonic system. But I think it's kind of interesting that we have all 3 different styles of national governance within our own fraternity. And if you add Grand Encampment, it gets even more complicated, since they are stronger central government, but still a lot of Grand Commanders get to decide on their own stuff.
Well, and as our good friend and brother Andre Belliveau mentioned, Grand Encampment of Knights Templar could actually function as our military.
They're packing heat. They got sword.
Yeah.
Well, and as I said, if total weight is a sign of strength, we will totally win.
All right, let's get to our final topic for tonight, which is abortion. Oh, wait, sorry, we have to go right to social media. Sorry, we're not going to get to that one. looks like the time just ran out. So, Jason, why don't you cut us over to social media quickly?
All right, so brother Blake Miles Leach from the Aussie land of Down Under mentions, hey, I don't know about you guys, but my jurisdiction favors monarchy over politics. And I mentioned back, you know, this is what we were talking about in the beginning with civil liberties. There's a difference between the tenets of Freemasonry and how Freemasonry is actually played out in practice. But Brother William Sullivan says a hypothetical Masonic party would be destroyed regarding civil rights and many other issues because we exclude women. To say we consider everyone equal would come across as hypocritical unless we admit women and truly make them equal in practice. That's why it's highly doubtful that there will ever be another president of the United States who's a Freemason.
To that, you know, I have to say that I wrote a piece about could a Freemason be president today. My main stance was that a true Freemason couldn't, just because, you know, we're not BS artists for the most part. You know, we have to be honest.
Integrity.
And,
Yeah, good point.
that kind of thing. And so I just don't think it would ever work based on that alone. But great point, yeah.
So here's another question from Brother Andre. Would a Masonic party support a subsidized single-payer higher education platform?
I think if you're going from 1920s Scottish Rite, then probably yes.
But if
If you're going with current Supreme Council, probably no. And if you're going with everybody else, it's here's a scholarship. Now have fun at school.
yeah, I was gonna say if you're going by current standards I didn't get any free books when I got raised, so not even a Masonic Bible. So
you'd be like, who's going to pay for all these free programs the Freemasons are going to put on? And I'll tell you, taxes are gone. They're gone. But every American citizen has to pay per capita.
Well, and you know, it's
Ooh.
interesting.
I like
It's interesting you point this out in that the Masonic fraternity, it was actually a huge deal to actually fund colleges. I mean, the college in which Rob Morris essentially wrote the entire Order of Eastern Star Ritual was a Masonic college, and so there was a huge push for higher education at that point in time. Of course, it was, you know, it was more of a fraternal duty. It wasn't this idea of government. So when we're looking at it as government extracting money, giving it to somebody else. But in Freemasonry, it was given solely from the desire to do a charitable work, in this case, to erect colleges throughout the country.
So, Nick, I know you already gave your answer to Mike Hambrecht, but would the Masonic Party be more like a revival of the Federalist Party?
No. Maybe the Anti-Federalist Party, but probably not the Democratic Republicans. But if you're looking at just the government style with which we function, no, because they supported an extremely strong centralized government that would pay war debts and take on all the necessary things that would involve that, including a national bank. So I would suspect no.
So we also have a great post from Brother Andre, who supports the open carry of swords.
free swords for all.
Sounds rad. Let me know when they have a buyback. I got a bunch.
Oh, let's see. What else do we have here? Brother Angelo Mino says the greatest Masonic experience or experiment in the New World is actually called the United States of America. The first failed experiment of this type was in South America with Gran Colombia under Brother Simon Bolivar, the founding father of 5 South American countries.
And a Freemason.
Yes.
There is a little bit of circumstantial evidence of the fact that, you know, democracy, it was really tried in earnest here in the United States. The sense of tolerance, the sense of freedom of religion, those things were kind of radical ideas that Masonic fraternity had during the theocracy in Europe and took over here, that was secret in Europe, and now they took it and formed as founding fathers the foundation of our nation. So you could say that, yeah, that part of those principles that we didn't even really talk about, democracy, freedom of religion, those things we kind of assumed. That's kind of interesting.
It's funny though. Like, I think about it and I say, freedom of religion and tolerance and all these things that we're supposed to be based on, I don't see any of that today. What happened to that stuff?
I don't like that idea. It needs to be censored.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
that's actually a good point. Now, would that mean that if we are supportive of, the right of free expression of religion, does that mean that we would now have to admit atheists too? The lack of religion?
Yeah.
Love everybody.
Everybody love everybody. There we go.
Great. All right, Nick, why don't you start bringing us home? We'll start with you to get your final thoughts and wrap things up.
Sure. I think ultimately a Masonic party would fail. I like to lead with something like that because, to be honest, I can barely agree with the other brothers on what kind of coffee we're going to buy. So, no, we would ultimately fail, and because we would probably establish the ballot box of Freemasonry to make all our decisions, nothing would ever get done because it would take just one black bulb to end all voting. So nobody would win.
That's funny stuff. Okay, let's hand it off to Robert. What are your final thoughts on the matter?
My final thoughts are, I in all honesty, like, if there was a Mason who ran for president or whatever, I think it would be one of the weirdest things ever, and I think Masons from around the world would look at it like, that's really awesome, and then they would hope to God that the dude was clean and, I mean, this is the age in which I've never seen or heard of a candidate since I've been alive that didn't have something where they did something horrible, according to some group. So it would be weird for me. As far as the Masonic Party, I thought it would be funny to have some stuff like, when the president's done, there's not an election. It's just kind of a mock election, really, and the vice president just gets the chair no matter what, right? Because that's every lodge, right? A progressive line. And then when he's done, the Secretary of State gets it no matter what, unless somebody, stands up and says no, right? There wouldn't be government women in the government roles. Taxes again would turn into per capita. Just so many funny things, kind of pointing out the idiosyncrasies there, which, one of my favorite websites now is The Past Bastard, who does that rather well. But anyway, yeah, I know you hate that website, Jason, sorry.
I don't hate it. I just wish all of the articles were good.
So
There's like 2% of them that are really good, and then the rest is garbage.
yeah.
It's a guilty pleasure.
It is. So, when it comes down to it, do I want a Mason to run for president? Yeah, it'd be awesome. In fact, Mason is actually mayor of the town my lodge is in, and he's a brother of my lodge, and he's awesome, and he's done a great many things for the community. He's an ex-police officer, retired, and he's awesome. So, I don't know. I mean, it could happen. It could be awesome. Would it happen on the national level? Look, I just don't think there's that many smart people in America.
On that note, let's cut over to Jason for his thoughts.
I can totally get behind a presidential platform based on brotherly love, relief, and truth. Looking at mankind as your brotherhood, mankind to include womankind, and people truly of all creeds and races and ethnicities and religions. The problem is, as we see in Freemasonry today, the practice and the operationalization of the tenets of Freemasonry is where a lot of organizations fall short. I would tend to agree with Robert that if I ever saw a Masonic candidate, I'd be very skeptical, first and foremost, just because of the lack of moral fortitude and the lack of critical thinking that is at least made out to be present in today's media. So I don't know if we'll ever have a Mason president again. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I wouldn't wish the office of the presidency on my worst enemy at this point. But again, the tenets of Freemasonry are things that are absolutely fantastic. Separation of church and state, tolerance of religion, tolerance in general. These are all things that we can get behind to grow this country and this world into a more productive society. It's just a matter of making those hard decisions to actually bring the world forward in line with those tenets. Because nepotism and autocratic rule is very comforting, and it's hard to break away from that and give up that power once you've got it.
Thank you, Jason. Juan Sepulveda.
Why in the world would the Masonic Roundtable be talking about politics? Is the question, my brothers. And I know we've said it before, but I want to make sure that we revisit it again. Talking about politics is not restricted to Masons. I particularly encourage all of you to talk about politics, only if in the process you give a good example of being a Mason, that you comport yourself in a respectful manner, that you respect everybody's opinion, and that if you are going to try to present your understanding, you do so in a way that it's intellectually honest, that you understand what that means. So don't do it within lodge. Don't ever joke about religion or politics within lodge. It's frowned upon, and even if you think it's funny, I guarantee you there's a brother there whose harmony is being it's being, I don't know, unbalanced, and you don't want to be responsible for that. But outside, I think a responsible brother that can handle the conversation should engage in it. If it's giving you more trouble and more anger than benefit, then avoid it. Don't talk about it. You know, I've had that in the past. I've had friends with whom I've, for the well-being of our friendship, I've rather not speak about politics or religion with them. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy every single minute that I spend with them talking about everything else. So thank you all for listening. And again, if you agree or disagree with any of our stuff, go to our page and let us know. We would love to hear your opinion.
Okay.
Thank you, brothers.
Good. Thank you, Juan. What? It looks like we have a guest.
Hello. I am here. I am ready. I am accepting your nomination. I am very pleased to be the leader of this particular Masonic Party. As you know, my name is Sheeple, Wake Up Sheeple 35. And just like in the original Anti-Masonic Party, which really had exactly what it needed to do going on, I too am not a Freemason, but I will lead this party to where it needs to go. My first order of business will be to introduce a flat tax, but I will call it the pancake tax, because I know how obsessed you Masons are with pancakes. I will also require all citizens to wear aprons, no matter what. And we will adopt the North Korean style of elections, whereby one candidate stands for every office, just like in Freemasonry. I thank all of you, and I accept this nomination as Wake Up Sheeple 35. I don't know if you can see me. I don't mind because I don't care, because I will be your leader, your ruler, and I will make sure that we are not tolerant, or we are. I can't remember. Thank you very much, and I am sorry I have not been on the show lately. Nick is just more resilient to the neurotoxins I put in his body, so I apologize. I hope to make more appearances someday. I accept the nomination.
All right.
May Satan accept this, and may Satan bless this country. Goodbye.
Especially our elementary schools.
Yes, of course. Oh man, so Sheep, you've heard it here first. Sheeple has accepted the Masonic Party nomination, and may God help us all. How do you follow that? Well, I'm going to try. Looking at the numbers, not being a numbers guy, the turnout of the population in 2012 was about 129 million, which is only half of the voting age population. And so 129 million when we only have about 1.2 million Masons in the U.S. today, you're not going to, just by standing on that platform alone, really get a long way. I think we've talked about things that relate to all sides, I think, and especially all brothers. But as a national platform, you're right, it's going to have its challenges. So statistically, even of the voting age population that does turn out to the polls, you're hitting about, what's that, 1% of the voters. So, and that's assuming that all the Masons vote. So there we are. Good luck. I think this has been actually a better show than I thought it was going to be. And I really enjoy the discussions. Again, the last final disclaimer is these are just ideas, and we encourage you to keep the conversation going. Share your ideas of where we would stand in those topics on our Facebook page. And thank you very much for watching. Keep searching for more light. Have a good night.